Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're joining you stateside. My name is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today. As always, bringing you the latest and greatest from the VR, AR, and XR industries. Today, we have on a very special guest, Hervé Fontaine. He is the Chief Growth Officer and board member of Innoactive. Thanks so much for joining us today, and it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Damon.
All right. So, Everett, we have a very interesting conversation about NVIDIA's Omniverse Cloud XR solutions. I understand that Innoactive is very, very much ingrained in the industrial metaverse space. Could you tell us a little bit about what the company does and how they help out their clients?
Yes. So at Innoactive, what we looked at when considering the industrial metaverse is how do you scale it? So I think most people know now that Omniverse is a great tool to build industrial metaverse because it does enable to create let's call it digital twin, photorealistic digital twins at scale. And what I mean is really it stays real time and it's photorealistic, so kind of it looks real. But once you've done that, when you've made that investment as a company to have your digital twin running like your physical one, and how do you scale it in a sense? How do you give access to people? How do you secure that only authorized people have access and do what they're authorized to do? All these aspects, and so that's what we're focusing on basically, to enable companies that have created their digital twins to be able to scale it internally.
Excellent. So yeah, it's great to hear about that and also to learn more about the company. So, as an end user of the Omniverse, we've seen like a lot of announcements take place over the last few weeks. And it seems like the stocks are up one day, the stocks are down. So there's a lot of chat about NVIDIA, the industrial metaverse, and Siemens and other companies. So what are your thoughts on like NVIDIA's most recent updates with Cloud XR and Omniverse? And what did they offer you as far as a company?
If you let me take both aspects, Cloud XR and Omniverse separately. Now, for all people viewing us, maybe it's not clear what Cloud XR is. So, Cloud XR is a technology stack created by NVIDIA to be able to stream virtual and augmented reality over the network. So it could be a mobile network, internet, but to stream, so from a remote rendering site. And it's becoming quite mature because it's now we're getting into generation 4, and the quality is pretty solid. Now it's only an SDK, yeah. It's a tag, and what we have done is to make a SaaS service that completely automates everything, where you just basically you have an app, you uploaded it, and then basically we find the server the closest to the end user. We launch Cloud XR, the application, everything, and it just works. Yeah. So that's what we've done. Now, coming back to your question about Cloud XR new generation, what's in it? I think a big step up because for the first time, Cloud XR will be independent from SteamVR. Yeah, I think it's known by anybody that has created a virtual reality application that when you run it on, if it's Windows based, then you basically need to use SteamVR to be able to connect to a VR headset or to Cloud XR tech stack. And because SteamVR is focused on gaming, of course, it's the roadmap of features for gaming is not what enterprise want. There was a big misalignment, and the fact that with Cloud XR 4.0, NVIDIA basically separates from SteamVR. You can still use SteamVR, but you have an alternative. Is a big difference because that will enable NVIDIA to probably bring the features at their own pace. And particularly I'm thinking about mixed reality features that are important for enterprises. So that being independent is a big thing. The other thing that it brings is there is a transmission protocol called L4S. Bit technical, you would say, but what's in it? The fact that the support is great because it brings the possibility to have a stable, low latency over a mobile network. And of course, we all looking at 5G, yeah, and that's what it's made for, basically. So streaming virtual reality is very demanding in terms of technical performance, and of course it's as good as the weakest part of the chain. And sometimes we all have experienced that when you're outside, you are in very dense area, or like in trade show and things like that. So and everybody's competing for the radio resource, for the mobile network and so on. And that's where such a technology brings a lot of advantage, because it's enabled to stabilize the latency, let's say the performance you're going to get, and so makes basically overcome the network problem. So those are two big things. And on the other side of your question, Omniverse, yeah, Omniverse at the core is great because it's probably the first solution to create digital twins at scale. At scale is important in that part because, of course, that's not the only option to create digital twins. But most of the companies that wanted to create digital twin were often finding themselves to be in a silo. When I mean a silo of data, because most companies use multiple software for multiple processes, and each software suite is optimized for one process. So you can, as long as you stay within that, you're fine. But if you want to connect, several processes of your company, then most of the time the only option was data conversion to you. So you convert from one, to go from one software for the other, but you can't do it real time. And that's what Omniverse brings. Basically, two things. First, we should, when we speak about Omniverse, we should probably speak about Omniverse and OpenUSD, yeah, as the OpenUSD is basically the common language basically for all the 3D application of a company to work. And the Omniverse nucleus is basically the exchange, so where people talk. So in the end, you get all applications speaking a common language at the same time. That's when you get your real-time digital twin. So that's big and scalable, I believe. What the new features bring, the one that were just announced at SIGGRAPH, among those there is the possibility to have very high quality XR reproduction. So bringing ray tracing into XR is an achievement. And it's basically what any architect or marketing person or designer has been waiting for. So that brings XR to a different level when you use these at work.
Absolutely, and based on what they had recently provided as updates from the last, I think it was from the last keynote speech that Jensen Huang had given. He talked a lot about the L4S capabilities, which allows for that low lossless kind of connectivity, and then also like you mentioned, the ray tracing, which is going to take a lot of compute and processing power. So these are things that a lot of people will look forward to when using the Omniverse. Now, we're going to take it actually over to you this time, but we're going to talk a little bit about your experience, your background in the industry, and talk a little bit about what you've done with HTC Vive, other companies that you've served on, and how did you take that experience to bring it over to Innoactive, and to kind of develop the solutions for them.
Well, I jumped, I would say, into the pool of XR in kind of 2016. Yeah, when HTC, I was at HTC actually, doing business on smartphone at that time. But when the first time I tried this new prototype, it was a kind of a special moment, because I just suddenly thought not beyond gaming, but really about what you could do in terms of education, what the architect could do about it. It kind of was obvious to me, and that's what I decided to focus on. And while establishing that market in EMEA for HTC, like in any new tech, new area, you have to cover everything, because it's not settled, it's not organized in layers and so on. So that's what I had to do, and it gave me the possibility to work with almost all layers of the ecosystem, you could say. So both from beyond the hardware and chipsets, so the 3D engines, like the obvious, we know the Unity, Unreal, but some others as well. But also the industrial software companies like Siemens Digital Industries or Autodesk or Dassault System, and down to you would say more IT related companies like VMware for virtualization and deployment for MDM. So you kind of have to work with all the ecosystem. So it gave me really a good understanding about what was on the way and what was missing. And after a few years with HTC, I had the impression we had done the job on the hardware. Let's say now the hardware was usable in a company, in a context with company IT policies and so on. A lot of work from the ecosystem was being put on creating applications, experiences, whatever you want to call them, but really the use cases. But there was still a big missing hole, in terms of scaling. How do you integrate basically XR application into a normal IT? Normal IT, as you know, in a company, and so that's what I've decided to focus on as the next step for myself. That's when I joined Innoactive 2 years ago, and that's so at that time we reviewed the strategy. Company was doing different things, and we've decided to focus only on that thing and to try to become the best at doing that. So when you look at how we work in a company, most of probably apart from the interaction, talking time, and so on, when we use a device, we use a laptop. What do we do with a lot of things is to trigger anything, you click on something. You click on an image, or you click behind that is often a link, but so you click to do something, and that's what we discussed a lot on that, about what is, when people use XR at scale, how they're going to enter those worlds or those applications. And I think the realistic picture is to say, if we project ourselves, let's say kind of 5 years, 5-6 years from that, I think you can envisage now that there's going to be two generation of devices going. So in 5-6 years, 20% of working people, kind of 1 out of 5, will probably spend a couple of hours in XR, let's call it for mixed reality or virtual reality, per week. It's at that time, people will still not spend most of the time, but it will be just part of daily work, because it will just work. It helps you make your job better, easier, better, faster. So it will be, it could be training. It will be for collaborative meeting with other experts that are on the other side of the globe. There will be different tasks, but it's kind of, let's say, 3 hours. So if you're realistic, the main work device will still be the laptop. So that means that, if you're not a nerd, you just, you're a construction manager or you're an engineer, you will just expect your XR glasses to work as if they were just an extended display of your laptop. So you use your laptop to say what you want to do, to click, and then you want to take your glasses and it should be working. And when you finish, you put them down and you continue. Yeah, that's what we think is the market for the next 5-6 years. We need to make it very simple for people who just need to make like one collaborative meeting every other week, just to be able, instead of clicking on the Zoom link or the Teams link, then they need to be able to click on the VR collaboration meeting and click, and it needs to work in the same way. You just wait a bit, you switch on the device, and you're there, and you do your meeting, and then you stop. It needs to be as simple as that. Yeah. And so that's what we've said to ourselves, and that's how we've built the Innoactive portal platform to do exactly that. Yeah. To say, well, we need to enable non-nerd, non-tech savvy, normal people from many different functions to be able to use VR when it's good for them. And for that,
Absolutely.
You just click, wait a bit, and it needs to work. The rest, needs to be in the back end.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things that you raised, was a very interesting point, is how people are actually going to apply spatial computing. In the past, it was Teams meetings, it was Skype, it was, working with Slack and other kinds of unified communication systems. Now that we have a 3D spatial component to computing, there's a lot more complex computing that needs to go in that process in order to make things work efficiently. Because when we have, say, for example, a lot of data points that are floating in, in the physical environment, we have to make sure that these things are anchored properly, that they're corresponding to the right bits of information, the right data flows, and it's having that seamless kind of platform that's going to help enable all of that. So yeah, it was a very interesting thing that you were mentioning about that. And so I guess with companies like Innoactive and others that are involved in this, this industrial metaverse is going to take off, but it needs to be to the level of precision that can allow for businesses to flourish, especially when there's dangerous jobs involved in manufacturing. So yeah, that brings me to a really interesting point. So for you, I wanted to know, how do you follow the trends in the industrial metaverse? How do you future-proof your solution so that way, as the industrial metaverse scales up, which is one of the topics that we've discussed, how do you allow yourself to, adopt your solution to these different things?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because if you look at this stage that the XR industry is still in the early stage. That's to say, the technical stack is not stabilized. So, but at the same time, if you're a company, when you build a process, you invest, on creating a new process, adapting, building. You build it for a minimum of 6 to 8 years. It already takes you usually 18 months, 2 years to get it to really refine it and so on. So in these 6 to 8 years, good part of the tech stack you're working will have changed. The devices that you're using now won't be selling anymore for long. So there will be about 2 generations and so on. So So when companies contact us, it's basically because they're looking for scaling with a solution that is future proof, and that future proof is probably the core of their what they're looking for, and there's several dimensions to future proof. But if I can cut it into three, I would say the first one that enterprise talk about is always devices, because you use device and the device life, the roadmap, the life cycle is about 2 years. So the question is, okay, how can we make sure that what I'm developing today on my process that works today and I want to freeze it, how can I make sure that in 4 years from now, employees will still be able to use it? The other dimension is geographical. Often is that today a lot of our customers are global companies, and all headsets are not available everywhere. So some people in Latin America will need to use something that is different from North America and so on. So there is the future proof is on the device. The second part of we could see about where companies focus on, particularly IT, is the trend of cloud native. As an industry, if you look at where we're coming from, we come from applications that are that self-contained and that are executed on a device. And everybody knows that the future of XR, or knows or can feel that this is not the future. Yeah, the future is going to be cloud native, because everybody wants a smaller device that can be used one day, don't consume energy, and have a great quality. So kind of the processing needs to be somewhere else. Yeah. So everybody knows. So I think it's obvious for everybody that we're going to move from a tech stack of local execution on the device to made very heavily cloud supported, and it's about how to make sure that your applications are not going to be stay in the middle, are not going to be suddenly not usable anymore. And so that's the second thing we bring as a platform, that security. And the third dimension that usually enterprise look at is the open architecture, you would say, because to create XR application, whether they're digital twins like Omniverse, or whether there's something else like trainings and so on, you need to rely on software tools that also are not stabilized. You can't do it on your own either, so you often rely on external partner. And enterprise then are looking at platforms that are open enough to make sure that they don't have their hands tied. If they need to change of a 3D engine, if they need to change of authoring tool, if they want that, their infrastructure to deploy and to control access and so on will still work, will still be valid, that they don't have their hands tied. So I'd kind of say that those are the three main dimensions, like device agnostic, being able to manage both on device, on-prem and cloud native solutions, and being genuinely open with open architecture to any software, basically any software application, any engine, and so on. Those are the key kind of key criteria that often enterprise look at. So to be honest, it can be a challenge as a platform, because to be agnostic of anything or any dimension is not easy. But we've managed so far, and I think this is the this is the way for the minimum you would say that you need to be able to support to claim that you future proof for enterprise.
Absolutely. And, with these different kinds of services, making sure that, they can scale up by working directly with the companies, in case they release a new software developer kit, if they make any updates to the cloud changes, the less they break other people's systems that are dependent on them, the better it will operate long term for them, and they can keep those people in the subscriptions or keep people using the software that's needed for everyone else's ecosystem partners. So I think that's going to be a very crucial and key thing, that these companies work with people such as yourself to kind of make sure that you can scale together but also work together, and that's what that ecosystem entails. We've seen similar issues with Qualcomm, for example, with their Snapdragon Spaces and working with the XR2 and AR2 platforms. Now, wrapping things up, I wanted to ask you, two questions. How easy is it for you to work with these companies and actually, correspond with them to let them know, what needs to be done, if there are any bug fixes, how is it to report those, and then also, how do you price your product, based on the amount of demand that's available in the market? Because we should expect, a very rapid uptake in industrial metaverse technologies.
On the first one about how easy to work within that ecosystem, I think we're quite lucky in the XR ecosystem that there's a lot of open-minded people. There are a lot of curious people. Yeah, in a sense, there are a lot of explorers. So generally speaking, people are rather open, and it's not difficult to engage. Now, when it comes to achieving something together, that's where you kind of have to understand and adapt to the different core culture, because it's extremely different. If you look at it from companies like Unity or Epic Games, their core culture is gaming. Their core, you would say, target group, their core interactions, or whether you want to call them customers, they're game developers and gamers, so that, of course, that dictate the behavior, the way they work, the way they look at things. Then NVIDIA is about high power computing. It's kind of I wouldn't say hardware, because it's both. It's half hardware, half software, but it's performance computing. It's a completely different culture from also even from work culture. And then when you move to companies that are at the source of a digital twin, they don't like companies like Siemens Digital Industries. Their industry, their core competence is industrial processes, and they make software to make it better, easier, and so on. Yeah. So it's we all know the sense of time is very different. Like in a company working in industrial processes needs to be super reliable before they are fast. Reliability is more important than fast. And then if you take a gaming company, there is only one success factor is success. So, but you're never in a hurry. If it's not ready, it's not ready. Yeah. So and you wait, and so sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to make all to combine all that. But I have to say, if you're on the top of everything and you keep everybody in sync and so on and so on, it kind of it works. Yeah, kind of people also realize they forgot something, they make mistake, or they shouldn't have acted the way they should, but they they take it both with a humility and sometimes even some making fun out of it, and kind of it works. Yeah. So that's the great thing about that industry, in a sense, and that it works. Yeah. Now, on the second part of your question about pricing, yeah, how to evaluate. We look at it from the customer perspective. So how do they look at value and cost from their perspective? And there is the kind of two groups, you would say. In many cases, you would say that our service enabled them to do something they could not do without. So it's a little bit so then it's more what the value for you. And so we kind of look at making sure that the cost of the service makes sense in their economy. If you're a company, you develop an application, it did cost you, let's say, a bit of complex application did cost you 250K. Then once you've put that cost, the question is a return on investment. Yeah, you've done it, it's reliable. Everybody's happy with the outcome, whether it's training or simulation and so on. But if nobody uses it, then there's no point. Yeah. So maximizing the number of people who can use it, take advantage of it, is the core to getting to return on investment. And that's the way we look at it. Of course, more, you would say, IT or sourcing people will look at it. Okay, I could scale by buying PCs. I put workstation everywhere, and then somehow and people will be able to use it. But of course, that has a big cost. So some people look at it by simply making the calculation, capex versus opex. Yeah. But it's as we know, a workstation to be able to run high fidelity XR are pretty costly. So you need to it's 5,000-6,000 easily. So you, unless you are in a place where a lot of people use it often, it's not economical. And and streaming becomes the obvious solution.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to see what happens next with these types of solutions, because I know that as we see more coming from a lot of the major players, a lot of the ecosystems will start to develop and flourish. So we're in those very early stages of the entire ecosystem's development. But I think within the next 5-10 years, it's literally going to be the next era of computing. So looking forward to that. So yeah, I really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for sharing your insights with us about the Innoactive's latest updates, how they're using the Omniverse, NVIDIA's Omniverse, and yeah, all the best to you.
Thanks very much, Damon. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So once again, we've been speaking to Hervé Fontaine. He is, again, the Chief Growth Officer and Board Member of Innoactive. Once again, my name is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today. If you'd like to follow more conversations like this, please join us at the XR News hashtag on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks so much for your time and attention. And until next time, keep following us. Bye now.